Okay, I'm going to call the Tuesday, April 15th Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And I will begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta District 11. We recognize that we stand upon the land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. And the city honors the First Peoples of this land and is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. And since we have so many people in our audience today, for housekeeping purposes, if the fire alarm were to sound, we would ask you to go through the emergency exit through the chamber doors and exit the front doors of the building to the muster point that is at the south end of the parking lot. Or if those doors were blocked, then you follow the staff and us out these doors. We would be running, so we would make sure you get out safe though. And just for anybody, the washrooms are located out in the main foyer, so if anyone needs to use those. So we have a very full Committee of the Whole meeting today. So with that, I will ask for approval of the March 18th, 2018 Committee of the Whole minutes. Councillor Batoye.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting, the March 18th Committee of the Whole meeting as presented and circulated.
Okay, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Now, this is an opportunity for delegations. If anybody would like to speak to any of the items that are on the Committee of the Whole agenda, which is the Path to Zero, Bridge Wellness Hub, Policing Committee, Property Assessment, or Designated Industrial Property Assessment, you could come down and have 5 minutes to speak to any of those items. If not, we will move directly into our presentations, and we're very pleased to welcome Don Cameron from Alberta Operations Site Director and Vice President of Dow Canada, Jess McDonald, Community Relations, and I believe Aaron Brush-Duncan is joining them. So welcome. We'll put Don in the middle.
Why not, right?
And we have about 15 minutes for your presentation and then any questions after. So welcome.
Thank you. I can get this up. Ah, perfect. It's ready to go. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for letting us come give an update today. I really appreciate it. It's been a bit. We were just talking about how long it's been since we've been here giving an update, and a lot's happened out at the site. So we wanted to just really give an update to some degree for some of you guys who were here, were actually at the LITH presentation. We're using some similar material. So there's going to be a little bit of repeat there. We can add a little more color as well as we move through here, right? So, okay. So just to start off with SEC disclosure rules, we always do this, right? Do not, make any investments decisions based on this. It's as it does contain forward-looking information. So we have a couple just boilerplate slides. We always like to start with just to remind, and I think in today's world, actually, this is even more important to sometimes we just flash through this, but I think with the tariff discussions, with everything that's happening in the world economy, we did think it was important just to highlight our presence here because it does matter, especially with Dow's ambition to try to achieve what we're doing with Path to Zero on a global basis and the long-term potential for being in Canada versus, the United States as we look at relationships with other countries, right? So it is pretty important, and Dow does have a widespread presence in multiple countries. So this is the standard slide that we actually talked about at LITH the other day, but I think it's important a lot as I give you guys an update on the manufacturing progress that's going on, just to remind ourselves that this is actually part of really the broader, 5-step process that Dow has going on. And that includes our existing facilities that we're trying to update, as well as things like clean energy, developing low carbon products, and working with our partners on that, right? So we've got things happening in all these spaces. And I just say that always to remind myself and audiences that this is a pretty complex. It's not just building what we're doing out here in Fort Saskatchewan and Prentice. So as a reminder, here's our site. And I always think this is a valuable way to remind ourselves physically of what's going on. If you look at Highway 15, which is along the bottom, and you can see that our existing assets are actually in the gray color. And so what we're embarking on, and I'm going to show you a brief update on, in red are the new Dow assets that are being constructed, or areas that are being constructed as part of Dow Direct Owned. But you will also see in blue, the dark blue, are areas that are key third-party partners for us. And those are actually starting to prepare to mobilize as well. Although today we don't really have that, but as we move in the next, I'd say, year forward, you're really going to begin to see kind of a dual-pronged update on manufacturing. It's not going to be just the Dow assets being built. It's going to become also linked to what the third parties are doing as well. So, and we can come back to this for reference if there are questions as we get on. So now let's talk a little bit about the projects. And I think as we break down and get a little more granular, I think up till now when we gave presentations, we've tended to be more broader. Now we're going to start getting a little more granular on what we're actually doing out there. And the first project at the top left is what we call a cracker. A lot of times that's kind of blithely thrown out, but essentially that is the larger facility that takes ethane and actually cracks it to ethylene and turns it into a gas that can be polymerized, right? If you've driven along Highway 15, our existing ethylene cracker, which we call FS1, gives you an example of what the new cracker will look like. And in fact, this project also involves modifying our existing one significantly, what we call FS1R, because in both cases, what we're attempting to do is take a hydrogen stream, which we produce already as an off gas, and purify it, and then use that to eliminate methane, which is how we significantly reduce the carbon dioxide. So there's a second project, what we call FS1. The third party build, own, operate, I referenced that earlier, and I think it's really important because I think here in Fort Saskatchewan, we're going to have a lot more partners on the site. We're kind of growing the third party presence. So companies like Linde, new companies that have not been here in the heartland, like Ravago, some of our existing ones like Watco are growing on this site. So there's going to be a lot more third parties that are actually just basically reserving and taking some of our land and will be providing services to the project. We also have a significant utilities, power, and infrastructure. This is another underlook when we talk about creating the site of the future. We're really recognizing our infrastructure in many cases is 50 years old, right? So we're, especially when it comes to things like electrical and some of the utilities there, there's a lot of money being spent just to get the infrastructure up to what we would consider modern standards and to be able to carry the load, particularly with power. We're making a large step forward to a much higher voltage distribution network on the site, which is going to be much more efficient and much more able to handle the large power loads that we're going to be moving around internally to the site. And so we actually break that out because it's its own project. Similarly, solution polyethylene, I have to force myself to try to not get too detailed into this, but I'll move on pretty quickly here. We're going to build 2 new solution polyethylene plants, as well as, which is I say solution, that probably means nothing to you guys, but it's a particular Dow technology that makes certain kinds of polyethylene. And then as well as a different technology we have, which we call gas phase. That's all at the Fort Saskatchewan site. And we're modifying our Prentice site as well. And then finally, logistics, which as I showed you the global map earlier, a big part of our plan all along has been to move most of our product out the west coast of China. Out the west coast of Canada to China and Thailand and some of the Asia audience markets. So that's in itself is a standalone project. Okay, the building, I think you guys have seen pictures if you drive along. One of the first things that's being done is we're basically complete with this new warehouse, and we're getting very close on our new administration building, but the actual warehouse itself has equipment being moved into it and is being used. And by July, we should be close to moving into the administration office. And then finally, the new ethylene cracker. Now I'm going to show you some pictures. These are about a month old, I'd say, of what we are. So I mentioned the new cracker. This is the furthest ahead. This is where we've been putting pilings in and doing a lot of underground piping. I think last time I was here, I talked a lot about putting underground piping in. That's done. Now we're starting to prepare to be able to bring steel out of the ground, and that's the next step. So this is a picture of where we are with the new ethylene cracker, and you can kind of see, if you drive along Highway 15, one of the notable things you'll see is the new crane, the large crane that's being assembled. That's for this site. And then these are pictures that are a little further behind. They're quicker to construct, so on purpose they're being delayed a little bit. Especially, this is also part of managing our manpower on the site. So these are the sites of our new polyethylene plants on the site. So then just briefly to talk about economy and economic and community impact, I'm going to hand over to Jess here in just a minute. But I did, as you can imagine, and I'm sure it's a concern of the council, is things like traffic and how we manage the new jobs. We currently have about 1,000 workers a day on site. Depending on how we manage to try to move cash flows around and things like that, we're increasing that to about 2,000. We think this year, and eventually we're going to reach 5,000 at peak construction. That's down a little bit from our original estimate, and what we're doing is we're basically spreading out construction to try to keep that spread. We have opened a couple of gates out on Range Road 220. We've implemented a significant part of our traffic plan is carpooling incentives, and that's just getting kicked off. And we have, I think I saw about 16% of our folks are using carpooling right now. We're intending to drive that higher, as well as starting to look at, especially you'll see offsetting shift changes to try to spread out the load on traffic coming on site. And then eventually as well, some aspects of busing, both locally, but then some of our contractors will be using some busing systems from outside of Fort Saskatchewan. So anyways, I think I've used my 8 or 9 minutes, and I think we have a little video in a minute. Is it the next slide, or does it go? I think now I'm going to hand it over to Jess to talk a little bit about our community impact since last year.
Yeah, thanks, Don, and thanks, Your Worship and Council, for the opportunity to be here today. Everything Don talked about is so exciting, but what's really, really exciting is that we're pairing it with a very robust community investment plan too, and we're forecasting to do $10 million of community investment over the next 4 years. Of course, you're familiar with what we're partnering on together with the aquatics facility and the Access for Everyone Endowment Fund. We're also, focusing more on building a diverse talent pipeline with skilled trades. So partnering with organizations like Women Building Futures. So we support their Power Engineering Career Accelerator program. And actually tomorrow they'll be coming onto site and doing a tour, and then our first grads of that program that we've supported along with Pembina and Interpipeline will be starting in May. We did, this past year, we did 13 RAP students, and we partner with Careers, the nonprofit, on that program. So we have a lot of good stuff on the go there. A newer partner for us is Trade Winds to Success. And Thursday, I'll be heading to see our first cohort of electrical students that we've helped fund going through that program. We also have a really robust volunteer program. 77% of our employees at the Fort Saskatchewan site volunteer. And another large part of that is the fact that we do an employees charity campaign. So outside of that 10 million, usually annually our employees are fundraising for United Way and other registered charities more than $200,000 in the community. So things that we're really, really proud of. And then of course our major partnership with the Nourishment Center as well, and the fact that we're helping to build a community kitchen, and we're pairing that with some skills-based volunteerism and having our project architect help and consult and advise on that project. And then these are just some new announcements. So annually we run an open call for applications. So throughout February, organizations, nonprofits, and registered charities could apply for funding. And these were some of the recipients this year. So we kind of have like corporate funding that I talked about a lot on the last slide. And then these are really opportunities to support a lot of local organizations. So, feel free to help promote that program. We'll be launching again in early 2026 again to receive applications. So lots on the go for us. We've been very busy over the past year in the community investment space. I'll hand things back to Don to tee up a video just to bring life to the project.
Right. Thank you, Jess. And as we finish, I think come to an end, again, this is the same video that we show, but I think it's very useful for folks to see the scale of what's happening on the site. So it's about 1.5 minutes, and it just shows what's happening actually as we speak on in construction here. So let me see, okay. So, right. Well, I think it was just useful. It's pretty exciting to see everything happening on the site. Our program director always says it's going to get ugly before it gets pretty, and it's starting to get pretty ugly out there. Lots of mud, but lots of exciting things happening in the midst of lots of turbulent times in the world. But we're pretty excited about where we're going. And oops, I don't want to play that again. I want to go to the next slide. There we go. So with that, I think I'll pause and end. And if there's any questions, we can take them now.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation again. I know the public was very excited to see it at Life in the Heartland as well. And I know there's lots of inquiries about what's going on. And I know for myself, every time I drive out there, it's very exciting. And you're right, I saw those cranes coming when I was coming in on the weekend. I was like, holy crow. So they're going to be tall buildings, or like it's really going to change the landscape. So, because those are high, like.
Yeah. So the purpose of those cranes is really to help set equipment over a very large of actual process equipment. We do have some very large towers coming in, which will be several hundred, 200 to 300 foot tall, but those will have a dedicated large cranes when we get ready for those lifts.
Okay. And we thank you very much for your contributions to the city, your social responsibility all the time. It is greatly appreciated. So everybody's logging on. So Councillor Kelly, you're first.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, folks. Nice to see you again. Don, you might recall, I think it was you, or at least you assigned somebody to respond to a couple of questions I had revolving around the but political uncertainty that we're looking at in Canada here currently, both from the United States with the tariff issue and within our own country with the election coming up, and some uncertainty in my mind, at least, on the status of or prognosis for the carbon tax regime. So given that, Don, are you able, as best you can, I guess, what assurances can you give council that this particular project is proceeding full steam ahead in the way it was initially planned, and whether or not you see any hurdles in the near to medium future on it.
Yeah, that was a good that was a good question, and I think that I replied back that really with the economic environment that we're in, things are very uncertain, right? So I think the best we can say is that our board and our CEO remain extremely committed to the vision of providing net zero polyethylene. And in fact, we have customers that are already signing on for that product. So the demand is there for that. And I think what we're having to do is we're proceeding forward and we'll continue to manage the conditions as they come, right? You know, I can't say that, you know, that things can go off a cliff one way or another, right? So I can't give you that kind of assurance, unfortunately. We do have a lot of things happening out there, and I do believe that our board, as recently in the last couple of weeks, and CEO is very committed to the ultimate goal of having net zero polyethylene. And this is the most competitive place to do it. So I think for Dow, this is our primary project that we're moving forward. Now, you know, timing and things like that, you know, we're always monitoring and optimizing those things, but the project itself, I think, is pretty sound. Probably
Okay, thanks, Don. I think that's a pretty decent answer, and I thank you. I understand you have constraints as well. The carbon tax, and I did appreciate your responses, by the way. I learned from them, and it pointed me to do a little bit of research on that subject. The large emitter tax, I'm thinking, will probably, and this is personal opinion, survive the election. It seems to make sense. Does the Path to Zero project, though, depend on any monies that might have flowed or would flow from the consumer carbon tax, on the assumption that that's not going to exist post-election?
Yeah, that was really a good question, and actually spurred us to make sure we were very, very clear ourselves. We've recently brought in some additional staff. We're working on our carbon accounting, so that was an important question. So the consumer carbon tax actually is as you said, is completely separate from the industrial emitter programs at the federal, and then of course at the provincial level. The federal programs backstop the provincial programs, right? So we do not really see any impact one way or another from the consumer programs, to be honest with you. Those really have no impact on the project and are not built in any way. Certainly the industrial, we do believe, along with many of our peers in Canada, that that maintaining stability with the industrial emitter tax is a positive step for Canada in the long term and provide some stability. It's not just us. There's multiple projects in Canada that are scoped and based around that, some very, very large ones. And, you know, so we do believe that it's important that go forward. But again, we'll continue to navigate, you know, as we get through the federal elections and then move into the provincial responses to whoever is elected at the federal level here in, I guess, a couple of weeks. So, or yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Blissard.
Hi, I was impressed with your presentation at Life in the Heartland, and it's a good refresher because there was a lot of information in it. Does the extended producer responsibility affect Dow at all? You know, we now have to, our recycle is done by, I don't know who actually does it now, but it's managed by someone else. So does that affect Dow? Do you pay into that?
Yeah, I think we do. Jess, you may be able to confirm that. I mean, we definitely are participating in the, you know, through the Alberta, you know, Plastics Association, and we are heavily involved through CIAC in being part of our responsibilities to track the plastics forward. But as far as paying forward into extended producer responsibilities.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but we can definitely get you the answer.
We can confirm.
Talk to experts.
Probably pay
in our
into it
company,
somewhere, right? And
no
also
problem.
Dow makes plastics, or products that become ultimately plastics around the world. Have you ever considered like recycle, or do you take some in now as part of feedstock?
Yeah, actually, Dow has actually in recent year, in this last year, actually acquired several large feedstock plastics recycling companies, right? And one area that's particularly exciting is to move beyond mechanical recycling into the area of mechanical, or into thermal or chemical recycling, right? Where you can actually that eliminates the need as much need for mixing. For cleaning plastics. And so we have several facilities now that Dow owns down in the United States, as well as overseas, particularly in Germany, that we actually have gotten into. And we're actually have looked at evaluating some facilities here in the fort as part of the project. I think always the challenge in Canada continues to be feedstock, like actual quantity. We just don't have that many people, and we're distributed. So getting recycled plastic in quantity to a recycler, the bigger impact is closer to large, large population centers. So, but yeah, Dow is definitely excited about that. We recognize that's a key piece of keeping plastic as a viable product for the 50 or 60-year future, right?
That's good to hear. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everybody. Always very impressed with you guys' commitment to social responsibility, and just so much gratitude for the way that you lift our community up and all that you guys do. It's an absolute pleasure to work with Dow employees when we get out with them in the community. My only question was, I was just curious from a community standpoint, if anybody wanted more information on the project or even like job opportunities, where is the best place for them to direct that?
You want to take that?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Macon, that's a great question. So for jobs, the Path to Zero webpage is the best starting point. There's a link that you can click on there. People can go in and set up a profile so they get notifications for the Dow jobs. And then if they need more information, if they either Google Path to Zero, or Dow Canada partnerships. There's lots of information on, who we support, what the priorities are, and then there's like a contact us if anyone wants to have a discussion. I'm always happy to meet with many people on a weekly basis. So,
Perfect.
any
Thank
of those
you very
options.
much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batoye.
Thank you for your presentation, and so good to see you as well. Just wanted to obviously say thank you for your continued partnerships and your commitment to sustainability. And I think that the Path to Zero basically helps us meet our local environmental goals. My question is to you, Don. I believe it was last year we're having a conversation, and one of the challenges you had mentioned was about housing for this numerous people that are going to be moving to the area, and I'm just curious about that. Is that still a challenge, and what is happening in that regard?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially as we look to ramp up. I think we do have concerns. I hear some of the discussion about what our vacancy rate here in the Fort Saskatchewan area is. I don't know that Sherwood Park is that much different, and I see statistics that the Edmonton area in general is one of the fastest growing areas in Canada, right? So I think holistically it's a concern for us, high level. We have not taken any steps. We're in a monitoring stage right now. We haven't seen any limitations, for example, for some of the folks who've moved up here or who are moving into the area for Dow. We haven't seen, it's obviously a tight market and moving fast, but we haven't seen any limitations on that. So we've actually chosen, we're not actively necessarily taking any actions on that other than monitoring at this time. And we haven't seen a limit on that at this point. So that's not as much of a priority. We're keeping as a yellow on our risk matrix right now.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you very much for your response. And again, Dow is such an amazing company. I actually worked for Dow over 10 years ago, and so definitely an organization that I'm very proud to know, right? And to just really appreciate all the work you do with our community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I'll thank you once again with your housing. I think there's going to be about 300 apartments coming on by this fall when I drive around our community. So there should be lots of rental units coming available. So that will be good news for anybody that wants to rent. But we greatly appreciate your time. You know, I just want to give accolades to Dawn and to Jess. They come out to all community events. I think everything that I'm at, they're at. So we're at a lot of things together, and we just greatly appreciate your commitment to our community. So thank you. Now, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go. We won't hold it against you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, great. Thank you. The next presentation is from the Bridge Wellness Hub for Youth, and we have Felipe dos Santos, the Executive Director. I'm not sure if anybody's joining you. Nope, you're going to do it solo. So we have about 10 minutes for your presentation. So welcome, Felipe.
Thank you for having me. Your Worship, Mayor Couture, and council members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the Bridge Wellness Hub for Youth / Kickstand Fort Saskatchewan. I need to set up this on presenter view and then we can get started. I don't know why I'm pushing the cursors to go back and it's just going back and forth. There we go. Okay. You got it? I think so. As long as it doesn't go on its, oh, there you go. It's going on its own. And anyway, if you, yeah. Let's see if it goes on its own. Yeah, well. I'm not sure what's causing it. Yeah, me neither. But anyways, yeah, we'll get started and hopefully this works out in a better way than what I'm. Okay. I think I'm going to put it back to the other mode so that way I can have control of the slides. I apologize for that. So my name is Felipe dos Santos. I'm the Executive Director at the Bridge Wellness Hub for Youth in Fort Saskatchewan. And I'm here to share how the Bridge is making a difference in the lives of youth in Fort Saskatchewan, the challenges that we are currently facing, and also our vision for the future. So just to get started, these are our vision, mission, and values that we currently have as an organization. I'm not going to go too much into that. This here is also the Kickstand model that we are currently using. We're funded by Kickstand. The Kickstand in Alberta is actually our funder, and also we are part of the Integrated Youth Services National Network in Canada, which is also part of an international network across the world. We have members from Australia, Israel, Denmark, Ireland, England, the US. So this is a model that is currently being implemented across the world in terms of delivering integrated youth services for youth between the ages of 11 to 24. The challenges that have been researched and kind of come up to the surface is that youth around the world are not accessing services as they should, not only for mental health, but also for health. So when this was raised at an international level, more research was done to try and find a model as to which, how can we find a solution to have youth access services in a way that prevents suicide, that prevents escalation of addiction, and supports not just for a specific purpose, but also as a holistic person. It's not just about one single problem that you help a human being. It's also about how can you deliver that process of having a place where a person can go and have multiple access to different services in a way that is low barrier, low cost, and productive in the sense of a person having success in being the best person they can be. So this is a model that we're implementing in Alberta, also here in Fort Saskatchewan. It goes from inputs to provincial implementation, the local youth centers, the outcomes. We are one of the 4 centers in Alberta that is right now with a physical location. We're part of the initial, I would say, implementation in terms of physical location. So the work that has been done for some of the FCSS staff, BGC, PCN at the very beginning in 2019 created pretty much the foundation for what we have now. And those people, I have to praise their efforts. They were the pioneers for this to happen in Fort Saskatchewan. I think we should all be very proud that we have a location like this in our city. And we are now actually regarded internationally as one of the model centers on how to implement services for youth ages 11 to 24. So, praise those pioneers that did that work, and now we're continuing that model. If we look at the programs and service providers that we have right now, we provide services for mental health, life skills, employment, educational workshops, recreation and prevention, health, restorative justice, sexual health, counseling, navigation, check-ins, and free meals. Our key service providers are, the RCMP, FCSS, BGC, Families First, Restorative Justice, Saffron Center, the Indigenous Society, PCN, Sherwood Park and Fort Saskatchewan, Infinite Path, BGS Career Services, the Fort Saskatchewan Food Bank, and also the Creating Hope Society. We have a presence at community tables. We collaborate with local schools and all the different organizations in terms of advocating for the youth and also the supports that they need. We also have a youth council at the Bridge that provides us with feedback in regards to services that they would like, things that are existing, that are going really well, what else is there in the community. So we also have, consultation from the youth in terms of finding out how to move forward or what kind of gaps we need to address. And then we're part of the Poverty Awareness Fort Saskatchewan on food security. In terms of numbers, we currently serve about 170 individuals. I looked at the stats just before I came in. We're now at 180. Our average visits per month range from 140 visits to 270. That's a 10% variance depending on how many youth sign in. A lot of them don't sign in for the stats. If you're going to look at the stats that we have had in the last year from March 2024 to 2025, you can see how there's no really consistency in terms of youth attendance. It flows, it changes, it depends on the weather, it depends on transportation, it depends on if youth are showing up. But you can see here in this graphic that we hit in October of 2024 the highest number of visits at 264, and then in November at 239. So if I was to say before that, in 2023, I would say the average was about maybe a third to a half below that. And so this kind of speaks of the volume in terms of the connections that we have with organizations across the community, the work that we've been doing to engage with the youth. And right now we're working at capacity in terms of the place that we have to service the youth. So we're at the spot where we're actually thinking about relocating because the demand is there. Last year we had a total number of 1,800 visits. This year, from March 2024 to 2025, we had 2,269 visits at the hub. And then you can see the stats below there. Those are related to the different access to services that youth have had through the different service providers. So you can see in green, the FCSS outreach worker that is here with us, Natasha, she saw 343 youth through the year. I think that's pretty amazing. The nurse saw 125. And then in terms of the psychologist, we have a connection with Infinite Path. They provided 388 free counseling sessions to the youth throughout the year. In terms of qualitative outcomes, we use the youth success stories, positive feedback from youth, families, and other organizations, outcomes in mental health, skills, and employment, and also our youth engagement measures, preventative measures, and then the word of mouth by the youth sharing information about us to each other. I think that's the biggest compliment that we could get, is that one part, that they actually share what we do with one another and say, you should go to the bridge, they can help you out. In terms of impacts in the community, we have seen a reduction in youth isolation and mental health, an increased access to essential services, low barrier access, community space for different supports. The youth build up networks and connections. They strengthen the community engagement with each other. A safe and brave space for all youth, not just a place for them to be safe, but also a place where they can be themselves and voice their opinions and advocate for themselves. We think that's very important. And then having access to food and nourishment to themselves and families. And we have seen an increase in youth asking for food at the end of the day because their families cannot afford it. So we have implemented not just the meals, but we also make more than what we think we're going to use so that youth can take meals home for their families. The current status is that we're operating at capacity. The demand is exceeding the available space. We have various resources for youth. We have limited capacity for new youth and programs. And then we have a need for expansion to sustain the impact that we want to create in the community. We use a stepped care delivery model, which means that whenever a youth comes in and they need different services, they meet with one of our staff, and then we identify the priorities for their immediate needs. And then we don't try to focus on 4 or 5 things at the same time. We try to decipher what's the priority, what is your most immediate need, and then we try to help with that, and then progressively help with the other things that surround that one individual and their needs. We have different partnerships with schools and different organizations across Fort Saskatchewan and in Edmonton. Our vision for the future is pretty much expansion and relocation. We need a larger, more accessible facility. Right now we sit on the first floor, and that can be sometimes a challenge for certain youth, although we haven't seen a lot, but we want to create a space where anyone with limited accessibility can access the services as well. We expanded our service hours and programming. We're now working, for 4 days of the week. 2 days are mostly for appointments and to have discretion in the services that we provide to the youth and also the families. And the other 2 days are for programs and activities that we have workshops, different activities like Dungeons and Dragons. So the youth, they get to pick these activities and then we provide them for them. We also have more staff, and then we're always working on more partnerships to enhance the supports that we would like to deliver to the youth. We would like to thank you and also the City of Fort Saskatchewan City Council for their financial support and grants throughout the years. We appreciate the support that you have given us throughout the last 2 or 3 years, most specifically in employment supports. They have created an important impact in terms of supporting the youth that are neurodiverse, that have a lot of barriers to volunteering and employment. So I would like to say thank you very much for your support in terms of that financial grant to help the youth. And that's the final slide. I'd like to thank you again, and also thank you for your support. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Philippe, for your presentation and what you do in our community. I'm sure there's lots of questions. I'll let some of council go first since I went first last time. Councillor Blizzard, go ahead.
Thanks for your presentation. I had a tour up there a few years ago, actually, and it's quite a nice space. But having said that, it is upstairs. So you mentioned low barrier access. So how do you do that if someone has issues getting upstairs?
Thank you for your question. We physically help the youth to go up the stairs.
So you would carry them or, okay. Well, that's for now, it works.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking for a place that is, level ground and easy access.
And the other question I have is, so where does your funding come from? I mean, you mentioned that the city helps support, but that can't be all your funding.
That's right. So our funding comes from Kickstand. It used to be provided by the Canadian Mental Health Association. However, the provincial government has decided to switch the contract to Kickstand. Kickstand was an organization that was providing mental health virtual services during COVID, and then were asked to expand the network pretty much similarly to what, I don't know if you ever heard of the Foundry in British Columbia. They have currently 24 to 25 youth hubs across the province. So the premise was that Kickstand would try and implement something similar to what Foundry is doing in BC with 25 hubs. So the idea is right now we have 4, one in Fort Saskatchewan, one in Grand Prairie, one in Bonnyville, and the latest one was just opened at the West End Mall. But we're looking at Drayton Valley, we're looking at Parkland County. So the Kickstand Backbone team is working on partnerships with different communities to open more centers. And they're actually looking at us as a way to implement the same model that we currently have in other communities as well, in terms of the services and the partnerships that we have.
Okay. And would you say, like, are you known in the schools? Because it's not well known. When I came across it, I'm like, I've never heard of this. Maybe it was newer, but do the schools, I guess that's where it's important, or organizations like that?
Absolutely. We are constantly trying to reach out to counselors and schools so that they are also aware of our supports and services. We have lunch clubs that we are trying to also go into the schools for. One of the biggest challenges I've seen is that the youth know about it, but then they're kind of shy. So what we're trying to do with the lunch clubs is for them to meet the staff, also to do community events where they meet the staff and they say, oh, that's the ones from the bridge, and they create that connection with us. But yes, we sit in a lot of working tables with local schools, and we get many referrals through the schools, not just the schools telling us about youth or students, but also we're going to the schools to do the intakes and provide more information to the students and the teachers about it too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I was just curious about the staffing. Do you have a lot of paid staff for Bridge, or is it a lot of volunteers? How do you make the wheels go?
Yeah, thank you for your question. We currently have myself as a full-time. We have a program coordinator that just actually started on Monday. There's also a full-time staff. We have 2 part-time staff that work about 26 hours a week. We have about 6 volunteers, and then we have many service providers that in kind provide staff to help us throughout the week. So we have Natasha Magus through FCSS. We have Infinite Path. We have a nurse that is there every Wednesday from 2 to 6 from PCN. So those are the staff that we currently have. We're hoping to get more staff. We also have a mentor that is actually funded by the city of Fort Saskatchewan that is there 18 hours a week. So the more gaps we see and we try to address, we're also trying to find different funding to help us mitigate those needs. So currently that's the staff that we have.
Okay, and then what's the basis on which the nurse is there? Is it for youth who don't have a family doctor? Is it for a particular type of need?
You could list a little bit more, and yes, for all of the above.
Just anything that they might need
Absolutely.
medically. Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
we'll do testing there as well, not at the site, but we collect the specimens at the bridge. We take it to the lab, referrals for psychiatry or other medical needs that the youth might have. Since Nicole is a nurse practitioner, she can actually prescribe. And many of the youth that come in don't have a family doctor, and that's one of the biggest needs we have in the fort is for youth to have access to a family doctor. Sometimes they are shy to go with their parents to see a doctor, so this is a good way for them to come in, have the easy access to the nurse, and address the need that they have without the barrier and without the conflict that they might have with one of their parents.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. So the next question that I have, and it comes back to your funding. How stable is your funding as you're talking about you want to grow and get into a new space? I guess I always question your stability.
I can pretty much say that we're very stable at the moment. Of course, Kickstand has a contract with the government of Alberta until March of 2026. Kickstand is very active at provincial level and the federal level as well, so I don't see that changing. However, I cannot say for sure what's going to happen next, after next year. But I'm pretty certain that the funding will continue, mainly because of the need that the youth have. I cannot see that happening. But again, it's not a decision that is up to me. However, in terms of the relocation, we're having efforts to connect with other organizations across the city of Fort Saskatchewan with donors, Shell, Dow. We're having efforts in order to see how they would like to contribute into our relocation plans, the expansion plans, because I think they're an important partner in terms of developing that type of service for the youth here in Fort Saskatchewan. So yes, we're working also with a mental health foundation in order to work with more donors, because this is an important, very impactful service for the community. So we're trying to work with different partners, different people, to make sure that funding stays grounded and integrated into what we do.
Okay, and then my second question, I guess, was kind of touched on that a lot of youth don't know about this at schools. But so if a youth wants to just come and hang out, they can come and do that, or do they need to make an appointment, or just look at your calendar? I guess I'm giving you a couple of minutes to give your shout out to the youth to say, come find us. This is what we can do for you. You don't have to necessarily be seeing a nurse practitioner or be part of restorative justice. You can just be somebody who wants to come and connect.
Your Worship, thank you for that comment. Absolutely. They can either make an appointment with one of our staff, or they are simply just welcome to come into the door. Even if they don't have an appointment, they're welcome to come in and talk to any of our staff. I think one of our biggest strengths is that whenever youth comes in, they're very welcomed. They feel like they can be whoever they need to be at our space. If they wish to talk to someone, they can talk to someone. We've had youth that right away go to the kitchen table and say, I need this and this and this and this, and we try to help them out right away with their immediate needs. We have youth that have been coming into the hub for 3 months and then feel like they are confident. They've been observing us, they've been listening to us, they've been watching everything that we do, and then they say, okay, I think I'm ready. I think the staff, I think the people here are trustworthy, and so I'm going to take my step. So it depends on every youth where they are at, how they seek help. But I can definitely tell you that the staff at the bridge are amazing in terms of feeling youth welcome. So whether it's through the school, whether it's through a parent, through a friend, or just themselves taking the initiative, they are welcome to just come in when we're open, and we'll help them the best way we can and make sure that they leave with a sense of belonging in a certain way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you, Philip, for your presentation. During your presentation, you talked about the visits that you have, and you said something about depends on transportation. Can you put a bit more color on that? What do you mean by that?
Transportation can be different things for different people. One of them might be the place where they currently live, and that they don't have access to transportation. Maybe their parents are working and they might take the bus. We have a bus stop close by, but that might be a challenge. So we offer actually bus passes for the youth that need it. Another challenge can also be the weather. So if it's minus 25, minus 30, and they don't have a transport, how are they able to access the hub? So then again, the bus passes are good, but they still have to go to the bus stop and endure the minus 30 or the minus 40. And sometimes it's just, how the fort is geographically limited in terms of, let's say if you live on the other side of the highway, that's not the best spot for a youth to access the hub downtown. So how, we're always trying to find ways, when we hear about this, we're always trying to find ways to help the youth come in and have access to the hub, because that should not be a barrier
Right.
for a youth to access the services.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. What I was looking for was our transit system. Like, if there was some sort of gaps in our transit system currently that impacts the bridge hub.
Yes, unfortunately, that's one of the barriers that we would like, ideally, to have the bus run, closer to the hub more often, and actually
You're talking
go to
about the
different
bus
areas.
stop.
There's a bus stop right in front of the bowling lanes here, so it's not very far. But then, in terms of the youth coming from different places, it depends on the bus schedule and the network on how often they run through those areas. So that's one of the challenges.
Okay,
as
so you're
well.
talking about expanded services and maybe timing as well of the buses.
That would be great. And also, if I can advocate on behalf of the youth to have free transit, that would be amazing for the youth as well.
So where do you get the bus passes? There's nobody. Where do you get the bus passes
We
you give the
purchase them.
youth? You purchase them. Okay.
For the youth.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Philippe.
Great. Well, thank you for coming out today. I wish you much success in obtaining additional funding, finding the appropriate space, and just building the bridge hub for our youth. I think it is something that is very, very important. So thank you for coming out and sharing today. It was very informative.
Well, thank you all for your time too.
Okay. And you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go. All right. We're going to move right along with the, we'll just pause for a second. I always wonder who's with whom. Okay, we will begin with the next one, Policing Committee Year-End Report, Corrine Rayner and Alan Wesley. Welcome. And we
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. My name is Corrine Rayner, and I serve as the Director of Protective Services. With me is the Chair of the Policing Committee, Alan Wesley. Alan is here to present the Policing Committee Annual Report to Council on the activities of the Policing Committee and to also provide support to the proposed RCMP Annual Policing Priorities that will be brought to Council next week by the Acting Detachment Commander, Scott Landy, who is here in support today. There are also several members of the Policing Committee here as well, and Alan will introduce all of them when he starts his presentation. Fort Saskatchewan's Policing Committee is a long-standing committee of council that serves as a civilian oversight body of the RCMP. Civilian oversight is an essential part of modern policing, as it fosters transparency, strengthens public trust, and ensures that police services are responsive to the unique needs of the communities that they serve. Fort Saskatchewan's Policing Committee has evolved over the years into an engaged and an effective forum. It provides opportunities for the public to share their concerns, ask questions, and have meaningful dialogue with the RCMP and municipal enforcement services about public safety matters in our community. The committee's work has been instrumental in shaping local policing priorities and ensuring that community voices are heard. The province has recently made enhancements to the Police Act with a clear intention to increase local input into policing. These changes underscore the importance of civilian governance in setting policing priorities. In response to this, I will be bringing forward proposed amendments to the Policing Committee bylaw next week that align with the province's direction and incorporate some of those changes. With that, I'll now turn it over to Mr. Wesley to present the remainder of the report.
Well, I'm good to go. I just need to slide with all our wonderful members on it. Starting off with Lisa Macon, who provides us with great insight and advice as to the comings and goings of council. She does it very professionally, even though her and I have strong disagreements as to preferences for hockey teams. We also have Cassidy Sinclair, who is a new nursing grad. Provides us with a younger perspective, certainly takes the average age of the council committee down about 20 years. But she also has strong connections with youth council and just an awesome enthusiasm. Terry Noble, what can I say about Terry Noble? He is like our policing committee superstar. If there's something to volunteer for, Terry is happy and enthusiastic to volunteer. And I guess what I'm trying to get at through all this is not so much ego stroking for the wonderful people on the committee, but just to highlight how wonderful Fort Saskatchewan is and the great people that are volunteering for our committees. It's just an outstanding crew. Continuing on with our outstanding crew is Josie, who provides us with such a great corporate memory. She has been involved in policing for a very long time, and if we have a question about anything from any point in time in history, Josie knows it, right? And can recall it with instantly. It's not like a think. It's just like flows out of her mouth. So it's just an awesome resource. Denise, what can I say about Denise? If there's ever a volunteer opportunity at the policing committee, if you can beat Denise to volunteering for it, you are amazing. She has the finger strength of a 16-year-old because she can respond so quickly to those volunteer opportunities. Just tremendous. And just rounding up as our newest member who couldn't make it today is Danielle Dumont. She sort of brings for us a new Fort Saskatchewan resident perspective. And when I say new Fort Saskatchewan resident, given the group that we have, it means somebody who's been here for less than 10 years. Because most of us count our time in Fort Saskatchewan in decades. Danielle hasn't made her first decade just yet, but she gives us an awesome perspective on what it's like to be maybe a newer Fort Saskatchewan resident. So what do we do on the policing committee? And one of the biggest things that we do is we act as a conduit between policing, municipal enforcement, and the RCMP, city council, and members of the community. And so we bring concerns from the public to policing, and the concerns of policing or input from policing back to the public. All right. So what's our oversight? So we have some oversight obligations, and these are found through the police governance regulations. Our biggest thing is we oversee the municipal policing service agreement. We represent concerns of the public and council to the officer in charge, and we help develop policing priority plans in consultation with the RCMP. So by overseeing the MPSA, or the Municipal Policing Service Agreement, what we essentially do is we provide a monthly form for the RCMP to report on crime trends, crime prevention actions, criminal apprehensions, repeat offender targeting, and we also discuss a little bit on budgeting and staffing levels. All right. On with the great accomplishments for this wonderful group that we have. So throughout the last year, we have hosted many resident presentations. Some of those presentations attended by up to about 16 concerned residents on any given issue. So we've had great sort of buy-in from the public so far, as that they feel comfortable and they can come, express their concerns, be able to talk directly to the head of municipal enforcement, be able to talk directly to the detachment commander. As well as we have attended over 20 outreach events, including AGMs, the RCMP Town Hall, the RCMP Precinct event with the Grey Cup. Although as fascinating as the Grey Cup was, I loved the drone and the dog, okay? The drone was amazing. What we can do with that technology is superb, and in 4K, whew, it's crazy. My favorite one is the bike rodeo, which was put on by Municipal Enforcement. That's where we served about 300 hot dogs. Okay, so it's always fun to serve hot dogs to hungry kids. As far as the Alberta Association of Police Governance, we attended that event. So that's an event of policing committees and policing commissions throughout Alberta. It's held once a year. In 2024, it was held in Lethbridge. So we all four of us traveled down to Lethbridge, and that was a really interesting and important learning and networking event. It allowed, especially for me, it's a relatively newer member of the committee, to learn a little bit more about what policing committees look like in a variety of parts of Alberta, and maybe learn a little bit about the ones that are working very well, of which we are one, as well as a little bit about the ones that maybe aren't working as well, and why that is the case. And in some ways that Fort Saskatchewan or the Fort Saskatchewan Police Committee can help them maybe get a little bit better on track. Now, I'm going to say we, and it's probably an unfair we, organized a mental health meeting between the RCMP and many community organizations to deal with what the RCMP identified as a concern with non-criminal mental health calls. Now, when I say we, Terry just did an awesome job in bringing all these stakeholders together, and it was not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of people to schedule, to all get them all in one room to talk about this very important issue, because these non-criminal mental health calls really detract from the criminal policing that we really want the RCMP to do. And so he helped bring all those folks together and provide the RCMP with a mechanism or a network that they can draw on in order to maybe follow up and deal with this extremely important yet resource-consuming activity. I guess speaking of Terry Noble again, I feel like maybe he should be running for council in the next upcoming October 2025. I'm mentioning him so much. So he has been our public complaints director. Now, he has not received any complaints, and this role is now sort of being revised and being eliminated, and the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission is going to deal with RCMP complaints directly. Okay. All right. Are we achieving our goals? I think as far as goal one goes, increasing public awareness of the policing committee, I think that was one of the biggest challenge that I noticed when I first joined the policing committee is nobody knows who we are. And I'll be perfectly candid in that. And so through a whole bunch of outreach events and having participating in a lot of other folks' events, we're trying to get the word out that the policing committee is a great conduit where you can go and express your concerns about public safety in Fort Saskatchewan. It is an awesome medium for where you can come to one of our monthly meetings, which are open to the public, and explain your concern directly to the people who are in charge of law enforcement in Fort Saskatchewan. It's just an awesome opportunity for Fort Saskatchewan residents to have a direct access to leadership as far as law enforcement is in Fort Saskatchewan. So we've got that process going, attending over 20 events. We try to promote and participate in safety programs, and through that's where we participated in the Alberta Association of Police Governance, the bike rodeo, RCMP events, and those events actually have a feed into our third goal, is that we do want to foster that positive relationship between the community and policing services. And by connecting and doing those activities with police officers, it allows us an opportunity to get to know police officers maybe on a more casual or informal-ish type basis. Right, so and it sort of builds that connection so that the police kind of feel like, hey, you know what? There's citizens that do care about them, and we care about their ability to do their job, and we want to do whatever's necessary so they can do what they do. And I think this connection of community to policing is so terribly important, because policing really isn't just a police issue. It's a community issue. We're all involved in policing, and we just have maybe different roles in that. So I know Staff Sergeant Scott Landy is behind me and to the left there, and he can't do his job unless the community is really helping him do it. And we're all sort of united in that particular goal, or that we're striving towards that same thing. So it's just awesome for us to be able to make that connections to police officers. I will have to apologize. I do tend to talk too much. Yeah, I know the mayor's looking at the time. I teach statistics and finance at the School of Business at MacEwan, and I tend to go on in 50 and 80-minute blocks. So I'm sure the microphone's going to get cut off pretty quickly here. So I'll speed it up a little bit. We participated in the RCMP Town Hall, as well as helping to create some surveys, survey questions. And based on those results and in consultation with the RCMP and feedback that we've received through our various monthly meetings, we have 3, I guess, RCMP policing priorities for 2025-2026. The first one is the crime reduction on property crime. And that was identified in the surveys as being very important. It also, the RCMP, and I know the Staff Sergeant Lende, I don't want to steal his thunder, we'll talk about it in more detail next week, but that includes initiatives to sort of deal with prolific offenders, and drugs will be under that particular item. As well, police visibility and community relations, and in that particular item, there's a focus on persons crime feedback. Fort Saskatchewan residents in the survey that we conducted had noted that they were feeling their personal safety wasn't as strong as I guess it could be. And part of that was just to incorporate that into that particular item. And then the last item is traffic. And I know that traffic issues have been something that's come up quite frequently in our monthly meetings. And I am done. If you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them. Sorry.
Thank you very much for your presentation. If you need to invite anybody down when the questions come up, you can feel welcome to bring him down. Councillor Macon, you're first.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Know you all see what I got to put up with every month here with Alan. He's got more energy than I expected from a statistics professor, to be sure. I just want to say just a big shout out to our policing committee, because we certainly have worked hard this year to move the needle on our priorities, and I think that we are growing the awareness of the policing committee in Fort Saskatchewan, and we get visitors almost every month now. And I don't think that that means that there are more concerns. I just think that people understand now that they have a place to come and talk to them. So as Alan said, we've had big groups of neighbors who've come together. We've had individuals. And I think that although we can't always completely make their issues go away, it has been very successful what we've done in there, and those relationships between them and our protective services have improved. So I think that that is a big win. And yeah, thank you to the whole team. It has been a pleasure to be part of that committee. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm next on the speaking order. So thank you very much for coming in, talking about the priorities. Now, I guess as I'm talking to the public, it would be like, yes, you can put some concerns into the policing committee, but if you have other concerns, you should be going directly to the police as opposed to the policing committee. So where's the line for what you guys take as complaints versus what the police take as complaints?
Through to your worship, I guess it would depend on what it is. Some of the concerns that have been brought to the policing committee are people attending to express concerns over their perception of increased crime, and they're more general concerns. If it's a specific crime-related occurrence, they should go directly through to the reporting it to the RCMP. If it is a concern over policing services or the conduct of an RCMP officer, then that concern should be directed through to the detachment commander, Scott Landy, and they can contact him through calling the RCMP detachment. So there are just different avenues. Even council gets from time to time concerns brought forward. Those can be forwarded through to the policing committee, or typically they come through administration. We share those concerns with the the RCMP for them to follow up on. So there's many different avenues where the community can connect in, and we do encourage them to attend policing committee meetings just to see what it's all about and to express any public safety concerns that they might have.
Okay, thank
If
you.
I can just add, I apologize. Is it also provides the police committee meetings provide a nice forum for citizens to be able to follow up on their concerns. So if they express a concern directly to law enforcement, they can come to a policing committee meeting and just follow up and see what's the status of this particular concern.
Okay. I guess the other question that I have, and I know this was asked at the policing committee, was the visibility. So I guess I would ask that question. How are we doing for having boots on the ground? What's our stats look like?
Through to your worship, if Scott will be coming to council next week to answer those questions for you, I can have him come down and answer that. Currently, we do have a vacancy rate, and we're seeing about 23 officers out of the 34 that are working. And Scott can speak more to that next week when he comes to present the annual policing priorities, or if you'd like him to come and chat to that right now, he can.
Oh, if he's coming next week, that'll be fine. Okay, I leave it with him. Okay, Councillor Blizzard.
Thanks for the presentation, and thanks to the entire committee for all you do. It's always a commitment when you volunteer for this. What type of terms do you work? Is it 2 or 3 year or volunteer for this policing committee? And do you find that you have no problem filling them?
Best of my recollection is they're 3-year terms, and you get to serve 2 of them, and then you have to take a break. Since I in my great 1.5 years worth of experience on the policing committee, no, actually we've had great uptake in far as finding volunteers. So we've been really blessed that way.
Good. And so as far as the meetings go, I kind of like that you're saying this because I have someone that might be helped by attending a meeting. Do they just come? Do they have to contact you? When are they, and how do they find out about them? When the next one is?
We have them third Thursday of every month, typically at the RCMP detachment in the Jarvis Community Room. You can send the person can send an email to policingcommittee@fortsaskatchewan.ca or fortsas.ca, or they can just come by. There's no requirement from the register in advance. They can just show up.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, that looks like all of the questions. So thank you for coming out today. And everybody's in your audience that was joining you. I was trying to see who was who, but thank you for coming out. You're all welcome to stay, but you're welcome to leave as well. And we are going to take a short break, short recess. So it's 3:17, 10 minutes. Let's come back at 3:30. Okay, the time is 3:30 and we will resume the meeting. So with that, we are pleased to welcome Jeremy Eman, who will do introductions for the 2025 Municipal Property Assessment Update. He wanted to do your introduction, so I'll let him do it.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm Jeremy Eman, CFO with the City, and I'm pleased to introduce our guest speakers for the next two presentations. First, we have Mr. Mike Krim from Tanmark Consulting, who will present the annual growth and market value changes within the residential, commercial, and industrial property assessments. And following his presentation, Ms. Arla Pirtle and Mr. Weston Bennett from Municipal Affairs will present the changes in assessment relative to our designated industrial properties. With that, I'll invite Mr. Krim to present. Thank you.
Great. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you for having me, members of council. It's always a pleasure to sit in front of you and explain what happened over the last year for assessment. So we'll get right into it. Here's a summary of the assessment that I like to provide every year. There's now 12,075 taxable assessment parcels in the city. 11,395 of those are residential in nature, 57 farmland parcels, and 623 non-residential parcels, which includes designated industrial. Total taxable assessed value in the city is now 8.33 billion, of which 4.64 billion are related to residential and farmland. 3.69 billion is non-residential in nature. 2.13 billion of that 3.69 is designated industrial assessed value, 628 million of heavy industrial, which is non-designated industrial, and about 928.5 million of commercial and light industrial assessment value. For 25 taxation, we are now on a valuation date for market value purposes of July 1st, 2024. And we now have an average assessed value for a single-family detached home in Fort Saskatchewan of $469,300, which is an increase of 5.7% over last year. Roughly 5.4% of that is market inflation. We also have an average assessed value for a single-family attached home, so we're talking duplex and triplex, of about $342,700, which is an increase of 6.4% over last year, or again 5.4% for market inflation. And the average assessed value for a condominium unit is roughly $209,800, an increase of 5.2% or 4.8% for market inflation. This map shows the change by neighborhood. And you'll see lows of 3.9% in South Point. Lots of averages there, 5.7 in West Park, 5.7 in Pineview, 5.7 in Valley Point, 5.4 in Forest Ridge, and all the way up to, looks like 7.4% is the highest average market change in South Florida Estates this last year. This slide shows that 74.1% of your single-family homes this year increased between 4 and 8%. So that 5.8% I mentioned kind of in the middle, that 6%. I added 2% at the top end and removed 2% at the bottom to get that 4 to 8. And yeah, 74% of your properties changed by that much. Anything above that would have saw likely growth, renovations, additions, things like that we picked up. Anything that's more than 15% is likely newer construction. Anything at the bottom end, less than 15%, might have been a fire damage or fire demolition, those kinds of things. I do like to provide a slide with other jurisdictions and what their market changes were. I did reach out to St. Albert, but I never heard back, so that's why the question mark there. But for the most part, you can see that Fort Saskatchewan compares well with most of those municipalities. Stony Plain, 4.3%. Spruce Grove, 4.6%. Devon, 3.9%. Edmonton, 8.4%. Pretty good market increase in Edmonton this year. Sherwood Park, 4.15%. Beaumont, 3.7%. And Leduc, 4.9%. For multi-residential, these are your apartments. We saw an increase of 4.1%. Edmonton roughly stayed the same. Sherwood Park, a little bit of an increase. Stony Plain was up 3.8%. Spruce Grove was up quite a bit, actually 11.6% on their multifamily apartments this year, as was Beaumont at 8.7%, Leduc at 11.7%, and Devon at 4, which is similar to Fort Saskatchewan. On the non-residential side, we saw an overall assessment value increase averaging 5.3% for the commercial, split up into downtown commercial at 6.9. The mall redevelopment, we didn't see much change in market values there. And then the highway commercial saw 5.5% average increase. Other jurisdictions are listed below. Edmonton always reports a number of different commercial property types. So they saw some of their office space go down 1.6%, and then they saw some of their shopping centers going up 2.8%. Sherwood Park also saw an increase, 2.4%. Stony Plain was up 7%. Spruce Grove, 4%. Beaumont, 4.6%. Leduc, 2.9%, and Devon, 2.7%. On the hotel side of things, we saw an increase. So this is a couple years in a row now that we've seen an increase in property values for hotels, 7% on average. Edmonton was up quite a bit, 18%. Sherwood Park, 13%. Stony Plain, 5%. Spruce Grove and Leduc were up quite a bit as well, 12.6% and 20% respectively. Light industrial in Fort Saskatchewan saw a bit better than the commercial side this year, 8.7% average assessment increase. Going down through the list, anywhere from 0.5% at the low end in Edmonton to 8.5%, 8.6% at the high end in Stony Plain. Getting into assessment growth, on the residential side, we saw or added a total of $127.8 million in residential assessment growth. That came through with 211 new single-family dwelling and 34 new duplex dwellings. So these would include anything that was completed in 2024 and anything that was still under construction December 31st of 2024 would be included in that. We also are seeing some multifamily development with some townhomes, West Park Place townhomes. There's some development downtown here at the Fort Station mall redevelopment, Fort Station Suites and townhomes. We also had some updates due to renovations and other changes. And there were 244 new residential lots added, so new subdivisions in South Point, Forest Ridge, Sienna, and South Fort Meadows, excuse me. On the commercial and light industrial side, we saw a total growth of 20 million, and a lot of that was driven by the Dow Path to Zero training complex and yard. They did a lot of dirt work and added a lot of value and investment into that area. On the heavy industrial side, there was a total of 80.5 million assessment added. Your provincial assessors are going to talk about the designated industrial growth soon. However, there was, something doesn't look right there. That 80.5, I don't think, I see what's happening, sorry. There was 91.5 million on the designated industrial growth side, updates to Dow and Kira, including the MRO building and Diamond Center and the new LNG plant. But we also lost on the non-designated industrial side 11 million. So you 91.5 minus 11 gives you the 80.5 in total. So of that 11 million, roughly 5.8 or 6 million was lost at Enlighten, which is an experimental facility that they shut down operations. And the other 5 million of that was taken away from what I do as your assessor, and now the province is taking care of it. So you didn't actually lose it, but I just wanted to explain that 11 million lost on my end. 6 of it was legitimate for a shutdown. 5 of it goes to the province, which is now included in their designated industrial assessment. Overall growth versus inflation summary shows you the assessments on in the columns for the 2024 tax year, the 2025 tax year, and how much growth for each of those categories, and how much inflation, deflation for each of those categories. So your total growth at the bottom, 228,388,000, just under 3% of growth. And on the inflation side, just under 5% of inflation. And then again, I explained at the bottom that 11 million that was lost in the non-designated industrial and how that came about.
Is your second column supposed to be 2025? Instead of
2054 should be 2025. Thank you, Your Worship. This is our assessment review area. So as you probably know, we do have to review on a rotational basis approximately 20% of the properties per year. And this is the area that we reviewed in the last year in 2024. So you can see all the commercial areas along the highway, downtown, some residential areas, including Clover Park, Sheridan, Bridgeview, River Point, River Glen. I think that pretty much covers those. On the residential side, when we're doing the review, for a number of years now, we've been sending out a residential information request letter. So in 2024, there was almost 1,300 mailed, and we did get a 74.5% response rate on those, which is excellent. It's up from the previous 2 years, which were also excellent. At anything above 70% is actually a really good response rate. For non-residential and multifamily, we always send out information requests on a yearly basis to all of them. And so there's almost 240 mailed, and we do get 57.5% response rate on the non-residential and multifamily, which is not bad. So to recap 2024, 2024 was the second year of having a separate assessment notice from the tax notice. On the residential side, we field the same number of calls every single year. It seems to be roughly in that 50 range from property owners. We did have 4 registered assessment appeals. There were tax agent and self-representation on those, and we did have 1 go to the assessment review board. On the non-residential side, same thing, fielding similar number of calls and inquiries as previous years. We had 17 registered assessment appeals, and those are mainly tax agent representation, and none of them went to the assessment review board. $2025 thus far. Notices were mailed on January 24th. No more or no less calls than previous years. We did do some assessment reviews when people had some concerns about their property assessment. And we ended up having 3 residential assessment appeals and 17 non-residential assessment appeals, and all of them are agent represented this year. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll open it up for questions. I guess the first question that most people would probably want to know if they're watching this is you're talking about 74% of the single family has gone from 4% to 8% on assessment. The first question is, are my taxes going up that high? So assessment's not related to taxation, correct?
That's great. Through your worship, assessment and taxation are 2 separate and distinct processes. Assessments follow market value for the most part on properties. The taxation is what you as councillors and administration work out with budgeting and everything like that. We don't have any part of that. If the assessment goes up 5.8% on average in a year, that does not necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go up that much.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the second question that I have, just a second, I might have lost my train of thought. Actually, I'll come back to myself. Go ahead, Councillor Blizzard.
Thanks for the presentation and all the information. How do you obtain assessed value? And for the different categories, residential, you mentioned apartment, commercials, like, do you mainly look at sales? And there can't be that many hotels sold or apartment buildings. Can you explain it a little more?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Blizzard. Assessments are based on market value for the most part. There are some categories of properties that are not based on market value, but for the most part, single family, commercial, light industrial, and based on market value. And there are 3 approaches to market value that we use as assessors. There's direct sales comparison, there's the cost approach, and the income approach. So direct sales comparison and cost approach are kind of a hybrid that we use on the residential side of things for single family dwellings. We maintain a database of information on every single property in town, including where it's located, the age, the size, what type of house it is, number of bathrooms, number of fireplaces, basement finish, all those kinds of things that any real estate professional would want to know when valuing real estate. Non-residential properties that have tenant space in them, maybe a strip mall, those kinds of things would be valued on the income approach. So we're requesting income information from the property owners. We're not interested in what the business is within that space or how much the business income is. We're only interested in that area that is rented from the business owner, from the landlord. So we do analyze that, and you can capitalize that net operating income into a value in real estate. So that's at a high level how things are done.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And you mentioned agent represented especially for this year. So what does that mean for especially residential, but both sides? Do they have a tax agent or?
Correct. There's a number of consulting companies across Alberta that generally represent the commercial, the multifamily, light industrial property owners. They don't, and they do this as a business. This is their business. Review assessments and challenge assessments for the property owners, because some of these assessments can be quite large and tax bills can be quite large. So they're working on behalf of the property owners that hire them. On the residential side this year, I said there were 3, but they're not single family dwelling. There are 3 properties that are vacant land for future development. So they're larger holding properties, and the developer that owns these properties has hired an agent to look into.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Yes, thank you. And Mike, good afternoon. Nice to see you again. I'd just like to address or get you to focus back on the slide. That's the satellite shot of Fort Saskatchewan, changed by neighborhood. South Fort Estates up 7.4%. And I'm not arguing that number, but it's my recollection now, having gone through this process with you for about 8 years now, that South Fort Estates every year rises in value at a higher rate than the rest of the community. And in fact, this year it's at 37% or close to 40% higher than the average of the other residential houses in Fort Saskatchewan. How is it that South Fort Estates can continue to increase at a rate that is significantly higher than the rest of Fort Saskatchewan?
Thank you for the question, and through the mayor to Councillor Kelly. So as an assessor, sorry about that. I'm looking up at the screen and we're not realizing. Yeah. As assessors, we can only analyze what's happening in the marketplace. And what's been shown in the marketplace is that the estate lots have generated some pretty good values over the last few years, and we've had to account for that in our assessments. I don't know what the driving factor is for that, but I do know that you're right. The last couple of years, for sure, they've gone up more than the average. I did look back at the average assessment increase if we were looking at from, say, 2020 to 2024 assessment year. That average kind of gets lost in with the same average for all the other properties. It's around 22%. There are some that are higher, there are some that are lower, but all of a sudden, South Fort Estates fits in quite a bit nicer. But you're right, in the last couple of years, it's gone up a little bit more. I don't know why that would be, but as assessors, we do have to follow that in the marketplace.
So when it comes to I think Councillor Blizzard asked you a question on how you came up with the valuations, and you gave 2 or 3 different alternatives, perhaps, I guess, working together. So when it comes to South Fort Estates, in your answer you just gave, you're looking strictly at resales?
For South Fort Estates, strictly at resales for those estate lots. And we have a number of them that have sold over the last 2 or 3 years leading up to July 1st, 2024.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I look forward to next year's numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I remembered my question. So when you talk about assessed value and the sales, do you have a prediction for what's going to continue to happen in the market?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. I wish I had the crystal ball. I think that, the economic environment in Fort Saskatchewan is going to be extremely positive, seeing what's going on with the Dow for sure, and Lindy. How that translates to the market, I think it's going to be strong for years to come. That's my own personal opinion, but I honestly don't know if that is going to carry forward or not. We've seen interest rates come down a little bit recently. The prime rate's supposed to come down a little bit more in the next few months. Is that going to help drive a little bit more market? We might see some more, population growth. Certainly, there's already been some multifamily development trying to maybe offset some of the really low vacancies that are occurring for multifamily in town. So, yeah, I see some really positive things in the next few years, but nobody knows for sure where that's going to land.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris?
Mike, kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but what information should you never disclose to your assessor relative to your property assessment? And I say that because I did participate in the survey that you put out, and it was fine, so from that standpoint. But what are the things ultimately that were responding? Like, we put in some new flooring, for example. Does that change it, or do you have flooring in any house and that's just part of what it is?
Thank you for the question. Through your worship to Councillor Harris, you should respond to everything all the time. No, I'm joking.
I knew you would say that.
We do ask you to provide the information because the better the data that we have, the more consistent and equitable the assessment is across the board for everybody. Your question about does flooring make a difference? Well, flooring on its own may or may not, depending on what you do. Are you taking out everything, all the old carpet and linoleum that might have been there since the 70s and replacing it with really nice vinyl plank across the board? You're putting a lot of money into it. It's likely going to increase the value of your home. You expect to get more in the marketplace, and certainly we want to recognize that in the assessment. If you're simply replacing eaves troughing on the outside, probably not. But if you're doing the roof and the soffits and fascia, eaves trough, and all the siding, definitely yes.
So asset management is just something that's a normal course of keeping, a residential, any property up to date.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that's just part and parcel of the overall responsibility as a homeowner. And ultimately, it will have a negligible impact on assessment, would you say?
Just the general maintenance type.
Oh, yeah, putting a new roof on, like a new roof every 30 years. I mean, it degrades, it depreciates over time. So
It does. You might be looking at a fairly significant bill for a new shingle roof, 30,000, 40,000. Does that, is it going to affect the value of your property if you needed to sell it the next month? It's going to. You're going to expect to get some of that value back, maybe not all of it. So we want to recognize that, and something like that would get recognized in the assessment.
Okay, so if it's a current standard in relation to all the appurtenances and all the things in the house, that's typically going to be reflected just in what are similar properties selling for in the current market.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon?
Thank you. How do you account for, or even if you do, areas, say like Clover Park, who have are primarily sold privately? So there's very little, I guess, market comparables out there. How do you handle those situations?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Macon, we do, even though it's sold privately, we do get the copy of the land title. It's always registered at land titles. So there's not a lot of sales there. We will expand our market research a little bit from Clover Park, maybe to some of the other estates. Lots, Southport Estates would be included, although Southport Estates is newer and it's going to have typically newer housing. But we will look at those as well.
Okay.
To help us out. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, did you buzz in again?
I did, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Mike, the hotel slide showing Fort Saskatchewan hotels up 7% this year. It sticks in my mind, Mike, that during COVID or in the years leading up to, and certainly including the COVID years, that the assessed value of hotels went down dramatically. I have, for some reason, like a 60% reduction in assessed value. So in the last couple of years, how much of that loss in assessed value has been recouped by the hotels and by the assessment base?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, You're correct. During that first COVID year, there was a significant drop in assessment on hotel property. They were some of the most, the biggest impacted properties due to the pandemic. They kept that lower value for a couple of years for sure. I want to say that they've gone up in value. Well, this year for sure, the 7%. Last year was similar, if I recall properly, and possibly even the year before, a little bit of an increase. They have not recovered full value since before that COVID pandemic as of yet. But we're also, in my mind, maybe still a little bit oversupplied on hotel rooms in town, and maybe that's going to change with the economic impact that's going to happen over the next 10 years in Fort Saskatchewan.
So when you look at valuing hotels, Mike, do you rely solely on an income statement provided by the owners, or do you, for instance, look at nightly rates for the individual hotels and try to confirm or do your own quick calculation on what the cash flow might be for a hotel?
So we get probably about a 50% response rate from the hotel property owners. We will look at the income responses that they provide, and there's still some that are struggling. We did have one sale in this last year that helped us establish value on one of the better hotels in town, so that helped out. The income responses are kind of part and parcel with the nightly rate. It all kind of relates together. So you're right, we do look at where we don't have income information. We do look at, getting that nightly rate, that average daily room rate. Maybe it's from the website, maybe it's from a phone call to the hotel manager. We do monitor hotel sales across the province, so we can also compare on a room sale price per room basis, and that does help us out as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay, that looks like all of the questions for you. Thank you for coming out again and explaining what's going on in Fort Saskatchewan. It's very positive growth that's happening here. So it's always scary to see the assessed rates go up, though. And I know in my neighborhood, they're just going houses, they can't stay on the market for more than they're sold before the sign goes up. So
that's happening a lot. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to 2025 Designated Industrial Property Assessment. Arla?
Thank you. Thank you for having us back. So thank you for taking the time today to listen to our presentation of designated industrial property, and more specifically, the provincial assessment role in the city of Fort Saskatchewan. I'm Arla Purtle. I'm the manager of the major plants team, and with me today is Weston Bennett. Weston is an advisor on our linear team. We'll start out the presentation today explaining who we are. We'll give you a breakdown of the annual operation cycle of the provincial assessor's office. We'll point out important dates and timelines. We'll talk about the requisition rate and that timeline. We'll explain the type of property described as designated industrial property. And we'll further talk about the City of Fort Saskatchewan's inventory and how it compares to the previous year. We'll also share other key updates on the DI property assessments in Alberta. The presentation should take about 10 to 15 minutes, so we'll leave plenty of time for questions if you have any. So who we are. We are the designated industrial property team working on behalf of the provincial assessor. We are a multidisciplinary team. We range in diverse skills ranging in property assessment, engineering, accounting, geospatial and data analytics, property management, project management, quality assurance, general administration qualities, and we're also involved in stakeholder management. So the team prepares, amends, and defends the provincial role. This then allows municipalities to impose a tax rate. Within the Provincial Assessor's Office, the leadership consists of Victoria Bachman. She is our Executive Director. We also have Michael Menard. He is our Director of Centralized Industrial Property Assessment. He's also our Provincial Assessor. We have Michael Tochin. He is the Director of our Linear and Data Management team. And then we have our managers that are part of the everyday operations and efficiencies of running the Provincial Assessor's Office. So this looks a little bit cumbersome and a lot of detail, but there are just a few dates that I really want to point out. So January 31st, we sent out the linear assessment notices. On February 28th, we sent out the designated industrial property assessment notices to municipalities and to individual property owners. They don't have listed here our complaints deadlines, but for linear, it was April 11th. And for our designated industrial or industrial sites, that one is on May 9th. Our amended notices, we like to point out on here because they reflect when municipalities might have to send out revised tax notices. So we've scheduled these into the calendar to be May 12th this year is the first time we're going to send out revised notices. I think we've got about 160 to send out at that time. On the third amended notices, November 10th, we likely will only have 4 or 5. So the one in September, on September 8th, there's where we have just a few stragglers or ones that we're just catching up on. The other date to point out is our December 8th. That is the supplementary assessment. What we've done this year is included a earlier time to collect the request for information from our major facility properties. That's going to be May 26th this year. We usually send out these requests in August for all the other property. As you know, designated industrial property, the physical characteristics date is October 31st. So we've moved up our major facility or our major cost reporting requests for information to get those major projects into the books prior to our supplementary assessments that some municipalities have some big major projects going on. City of Fort Saskatchewan is, of course, one of them. So the requisition timeline. In March of every year, a ministerial order is passed and prepared and approved by the minister. This order is sent to all CAOs with the updated requisition rate. In April, the Municipal Affairs website is updated with the new rate, and municipalities with designated industrial property will apply the requisition rate to the eligible properties. The requisition is collected on behalf of municipal affairs, and payments are remitted to the Government of Alberta within 30 days of the municipal taxes that are due. In February of the following year, the requisition is reconciled and it's calculated and sent to the CAOs to allow for unpaid balances to be reflected in their upcoming year. So there are 2 types of properties that are included in the designated industrial property. One of them is linear. I always consider the linear property usually to be cross-jurisdictional. These will include the pipelines, the wells, the telecom and cable distribution, the electric power systems, the electric power generation, and the railway. The other property inventory includes our industrial properties. These include the well sites, the compressor stations, the batteries, the terminals, the gas plants, and the oil sands. The properties listed in the major plants list in the machinery and equipment guideline will include all the oil sands, the gas plants, the pipeline terminals, pulp and paper mills, refineries, and the petrochemicals, so the major costing properties. This slide shows the industrial sites found within the city of Fort Saskatchewan. Each dot represents a property that has designated industrial property on it. There's about 70 of those purple dots on here. Now I'm going to turn over the presentation for Weston to present.
Okay, thank you very much, Arla. So yeah, just taking a look at pipelines in the city of Fort Saskatchewan. This year there were a total of 228 accessible pipelines. Wells, there were a total of 88 assessed wells. I know the graphic's a little hard to see, but it kind of gives you a broad picture of where those wells are located. So when we take a look at the City of Fort Saskatchewan tax year assessment summary, this just gives a breakdown of the dollar difference and percent and change. Maybe I'll get Arla just touch briefly on the M&E for Dow and Lindy.
Yeah, the big difference, or the machinery and equipment increased by 90 million this year. The buildings and structures, of course, are the MRO and the Diamond building that are accounted for. The machinery and equipment, I should add that Lindy is a big contributor to that increase in value as well. So 66.23 million for the MRO and the Dow. That is assessed currently at a percent complete. Like I said, it's October 31st as a physical date. The supplementary accounted for that percent complete. So there is still some assessment to be added on those two buildings.
Okay, and looking at the linear portion of it, there wasn't any huge increases. The biggest increase for City of Fort Saskatchewan would have been under pipelines, and that's kind of mainly due to the tax holiday, which I'll discuss on the next two slides. So, the provincial roll total, I know this was already discussed. Mike had brought this up too, but the total assessment, 211 billion. And this just gives a quick breakdown of that, what that looks like from linear and industrial properties, and the year-over-year increase on these properties. So some key updates for the 2025 tax year. So this expired the past tax year. So this year there was 62 pipeline assessments that were added to the tax roll that weren't previous there because of the 3-year tax holiday. 192 well assessments were added to the tax roll as well. And for pipelines, there was an increase of 1.7 billion in assessed value because of that tax holiday. And yeah, that equates to that total value there. AMR, the Assessment Model Review. So this is currently engaging in the CCRG stage of it, the Construction Cost Reporting Guideline. It's underway. Hopefully there will be a decision expected in late 2025. After that, the next phase would be engagement on the actual models. The hope is to have this done in phases. Unfortunately, there is no timeline. It's kind of to be determined as it goes and progresses. Yeah. The AYMs, those were set for the 2024 Minister Guidelines for Regulated Property Assessments. Those details are available on our website. And yeah, those also show, I think, the past 12 years of what those look like. So expectations. So our expectations for communication is just early information sharing of significant changes for properties and companies in this jurisdiction. Any concerns or complaints and comments. We definitely like to engage in collaboration, periodical municipal approved permit information sharing to support GOA, QA, and QC checks. Shared understanding of GOA designated industrial property assessment objectives, that being fair, accurate, and timely assessments. So key takeaways, strong growth in industry expansion. So Alberta's taxable DI property assessment grew by 9% year over year, reflecting a resilient and expanding industrial sector. Growth was moderate for industrial property, while linear property saw more significant increases in electric power generation, wells, and pipelines. The 211 billion assessment is expected to generate approximately 2.1 billion in tax revenue for municipalities supporting essential public services. An additional 393 million is expected to contribute to the Alberta School Foundation, reinforcing the province's commitment to education. Future improvement, continued enhancements to the DI property assessment process, including the AMR progress, improved complaint management and refined assessment practices, collaboration and commitment to fairness, transparency, and data-driven decision-making to ensure a sustainable and effective system for the future. So with that, yeah, if your worship or council has any questions that you would like answered, then please, by all means, that's what we're here for.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation, Weston and Arla. Councillor Harris, you're first on questions. Oh,
province?
Sorry. Try that again. My
Does
fingers
your
slipped.
department look after well sites in the province?
Your Worship and Council Harris. Yes, so actually both our groups look after wells and well sites within the province.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's obviously an important topic to rural municipalities with the abandoned and mothballed sites across the province that are costing them probably reduced revenue and or potential environmental challenges. Do we have any of those such sites in the city of Fort Saskatchewan? I'm not aware of any, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you have run across some.
Yeah, I can't say that I've, sorry, through worship to Councillor Harris. I can't say that I have heard of any, so I don't think there are, but I wouldn't mind confirming that.
Well, it doesn't really matter. I was just curious if that was something that we have been concerned about in the past or should be concerned about. And if we don't have any well sites of that type, and I worked for the city a number of years ago, and I wasn't aware of any well sites operating here. So just curious if you were. So leave it at that. You don't need to look into it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Yes, and thank you, folks, and nice to see you again. I'm just trying to, in my own mind, piece this together a little bit. If you could look at your slide, industrial properties in the city of Fort Saskatchewan, there's 2 dots, and I'm looking on my phone right now at a Google map of Fort Saskatchewan, and I cannot identify the 2 dots that would be lowest left in the map, outline map. Can you put a name to those dots by any chance?
I don't have sorry. To Councillor Kelly through the mayor. I don't have access to exactly the property owners. I mean, I can find that out. But sometimes when they're within, they're little ADCO boxes that we have on our assessment roll.
Okay, thank you. That probably answers that question. Now, wells in the city of Fort Saskatchewan. I'm aware that the industrial component of the city has wells for various purposes. Again, I was unaware of some of the wells that look to be closer to and perhaps almost a part of, if not bordering right on the residential section of Fort Saskatchewan. Any idea who the owners of the 2 wells, again, lower left corner of the map would be owned by?
To Your Worship, to Councillor Kelly, yeah, I don't know the exact owner of those. That's something we can definitely find out and very easily access. Yeah, I'm just trying to look to see. Yeah, I would.
Are they petroleum?
They would be. I don't know if they'd be petroleum. Like they're going to be petroleum in nature, because that's essentially what those wells are. If there were, let's say, like a geothermal well or a well used for, like farming operations, those are exempt from our role. So those would be some sort of oil and gas type well. I just don't know what those ones are offhand without looking at our other system.
And I'm surprised to see them there. That doesn't mean they don't belong. I was just unaware that those existed. I think I have a better understanding of how your process works. From a provincial basis, once the assessment is established, what is the mill rate that is applied to the industrial properties? Is that the City of Fort Saskatchewan mill rate that we determine in our bylaw for those that are resident in Fort Saskatchewan, for instance?
To Councillor Kelly through the mayor. That is correct. The tax rate or mill rate is set by the city. We hand over the municipal or the property, the provincial roll, and then the City of Fort Saskatchewan sets that tax rate.
Thank you. So the provincial role is establishing the assessment and stops there.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batoye.
Thank you for your presentation. So during Mike's presentation, he talked about how 6 million is moved to your provincial aspect. So I'm just wondering how that's reflected on your own reports and how we're going to be reporting for that growth for 2024.
through the mayor to Councillor Abitoy. The 6 million that Mike reported, it happens quite often where the local assessor will pass property to the provincial role if it falls within one of the classifications of what is classified as designated industrial property. So as soon as it's deemed to be a heavy industrial or a with the Alberta Energy Regulator or the Alberta Utility Commission, then it will be our responsibility to do the assessment. So in this case, there must have been a change in classification on the property, and so at that time it switches over into the provincial role versus the local assessor's role. It would be a decrease on the local role and an increase on our side. So the assessment is not lost, it's just who is doing the assessment on that property.
Okay, Councillor Blizzard.
Hi, thanks for all the information. One question, same I had in the last presentation, is, you know, I find it interesting. How do you assess electrical lines, wells, industrial properties? How do you figure out what a pipeline is worth?
To your worship, to Council Blizzard. Yeah, so for the linear properties, and I can speak more specifically to pipelines or wells. So that's all done through regulated rates, and that assessment model that we have, it's done through calculations. Lots of it's determined by the length of pipe, the size of it, the maximum operated pressure, the material used, and that gets all thrown into calculation to determine what that pipeline is assessed at. Similar to wells, they use such determining factors as depth of the well, the type of well, what it's being used for, how much production or injection for that, and that gets determined out to be assessed on that well. For industrial, maybe you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this is where I get excited because our heavy industrial is we determine the assessment through a very unique system in Alberta that we have, and it's Weston described the CCRG through the assessment model review process, and what that is a construction cost reporting guide. And so for machinery and equipment in Alberta, we have a regulation that we follow and how to determine these costs, and it's getting the costs from the company's project, and then we do a classification, and we decide what's assessable and what's not assessable, and that determines what we assess the property at. So it's really a cost reported on a project to determine our machinery and equipment, and of course then the buildings and the land are assessed at a market value, like Mike explained in the earlier one. So yeah, I'm proud of our Alberta system and how we determine what our machinery and equipment is assessed at, and it's a very in-depth and unique situation, but this is what we are currently reviewing in our legislation, is the construction cost reporting guide.
So once you have that, say a pipeline costs so much to construct, does it go up in value or does it stay the same? Like, do you just put in a bit of a cost of living increase? Like,
to the mayor, to Councillor Blizzard, Weston also mentioned the assessment year modifier. So each year that is captured through the assessment year modifier.
So which is some cost of living or something in there. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that looks like all of the questions for you. It's very interesting and informative. So thank you very much for coming out today and explaining this. And we're grateful to be in the Heartland and see this kind of assessment growth. So thank you for being here today and sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are at the end of the meeting, so you don't have to stay. So with that, I will just ask if there's any inquiries of council to administration. Not seeing or hearing any, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 4:19. We are adjourned. Thank you.